We're going to continue on in the series that we're in, talking about the I am statements of Jesus. Quick recap. We've talked about Jesus being the light of the world, the bread of life. Jesus says, I am the gate. Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. Today we're going to be in John chapter 11 and looking at Jesus saying that I am the resurrection. I am the resurrection. That's the topic for today. I want to begin with a great quote from a Bible commentator named Roger L. Fredrickson. He talks about the miracles of Jesus, and this miracle, we're going to look at the resurrection of Lazarus. Listen to how he describes it, contrasting it with Jesus' first miracle, which was turning water into wine. He says there are interesting similarities between Jesus' first sign at Cana and his last at Bethany. The one was so quiet and the other so awesome. It takes place within the intimacy of a family circle, the one at a wedding, the other at a funeral. The central purpose in both miracles was that the glory of God might be manifested, the power of the Father made visible in the action of the Son as he turned water into wine and the tragedy of death into the joy of life. And in each case, faith was born or renewed. At Cana, Jesus' disciples believed in him, and at Bethany, they strengthened their faith. So the context for this passage is that Jesus has a dear friend named Lazarus, and he's very ill. So let's start with that, and then we'll jump into the story right at the beginning. John chapter 11, it says, Now there was a man named Lazarus who was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sister sent word to Jesus and said, Lord, the one you love is sick. So the story starts with a description, and we have Lazarus and Mary and Martha, all family. And then we see someone comes to Jesus and says, Lord, the one you love is sick. So this is a little bit of a different situation. It's not just a person approaching Jesus and saying, hey, I have need. Or it's not just Jesus walking through maybe a marketplace and choosing someone on who to perform a miracle. Lord, the one you love is sick. There's a bond here. This is a special person. These are special people to Jesus who he clearly knows. Verse 4 says, when he heard this, Jesus said, this sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. So right there we see Jesus' response. He says, this is not going to end in death. Even though he's sick, it's not going to end in death. There's a greater purpose of what's going on. And then we read, now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. And when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was for 2 more days. And then he said to his disciples, let's go back to Judea. And if you're reading this with no context of knowing where it goes in the latter part of the story, as you read it, right then you should go, wait a minute. Wait, you love this guy and he's sick and we know you can do miracles, but you're going to stay here for a little while, right? Imagine I'm in the hospital and I call my wife and I say, I'm in the hospital, and she says, I'll see you in 2 days. You wouldn't be like, that checks out. You'd be like, is she out of the country? What's going on? And if I said to you, no, she's nearby, you would say, there's got to be something else going on in this story. Jesus says, let's go back to Judea. He doesn't say, let's run to this place. And so I just wrote down, God knows what he's about, and he knows his plans. He already told us that there's a bigger purpose in this. He already told us that Lazarus, this story is not going to end in death for Lazarus. God knows what he's about, and he knows his plan. So let's just put this forward in a very practical way. If you came forward and it was me and it was Jesus, and you explained your situation, and then someone said to you, now which of these 2 people will you trust in helping you with this situation? The wise person would say Jesus. Why? Because you go, well, he's Jesus. And yet in this situation, you might go, I don't get it. He's sick. You can fix it. Why are you going to hang out? But he already said that there's going to be something greater that's going to happen than maybe we might expect. So let's just make an immediate application to your life and mine. We have situations where we say, okay, now God, show up now. God, this is the perfect time. Do your thing, God. And we might think God is going like, I was really busy doing something else. I'm sorry, what did you say? Well, that's not what happened. God knows what he's doing. He knows what his plans are. And imagine this. We already heard how much Jesus loves these people. And so love drives Jesus to not go right then. Because he loves them and he has a greater purpose, he says, no, I'm not coming now, but wait. No, I'm not going to respond right now, but wait, because I'm doing something. We often see the pause from Jesus or the pause from God as a, God, you're not responding. You must be angry with me. But Jesus saying, actually, because I love Lazarus, I'm not going to go right now. Now, I love when we see an image that depicts this in a way that a child can get and that an adult can get as well. Take a look at this picture that will pop up on the screen for you, and you can see what this looks like. But I love it, God. Just trust me. God, I have a plan and I have a purpose and this is what I want. And God's saying, just wait. And if we're honest, you might look at this and be like, well, that's for kids. But then when you get real honest, you go, no, that's me. I want you to show up now in my time because I understand what's best, God. And God's going, I have something much better. Just wait. So let me encourage you, if today you're in a season, you're in a place where you're like, I need God to show up and he is not showing up. It's not because he doesn't know. And would you consider if Jesus was willing to go to the cross for people like you and me, that the driving factor in God's not showing up is not poor timing, but it's love. God will show up in the time and in the space and in the way that is best for you, even if right now you say there's no way this could be the best. But I love it, God. And for you and me as adults, it's probably not the teddy bear. It's I love the thing, God. I love the plan I have. I love the ideas I have on what the best situation. And God's saying, just trust me. So that's what he's basically saying to these guys by not showing up. Verse 8, but Rabbi, they said, a short while ago, the Jews there tried to stone you, and yet you're going back. Now, where's the back? It's to Judea, he just said. Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by this world's light. It is when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no light. After he had said this, he went on to tell them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going there to wake him up. His disciples replied, Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better. Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So he then told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, I am glad I was not there so that you may believe. Let us go to him. Then Thomas, known as Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, let us go that we may die with him. I love this passage. I love this chapter for so many reasons. But one of the reasons is they're like, well, gee, if he's sleeping, that's probably best. We shouldn't wake him. And Jesus is like, guys, he's dead. And they're like, oh. If you ever feel like you're just missing it with Jesus, just know you're in good company. There's another passage similar to this where Jesus is talking about how the Pharisees and their teaching can be like a tiny bit of yeast that gets in and influences this whole ball of dough. And the disciples are like, is he mad because we don't have bread? And Jesus is like, for the love. Listen, if you're slow on the uptake sometimes, we're in good company. Jesus says he's dead. And when he mentions Judea, we see that people wanted to kill him there. And yet he's like, trust me, we have a bigger plan that's going on here. So remember before it said Jesus loves them. And we said that because of his love for them, he didn't go immediately. Now beyond that, Jesus says, even though people want to kill me in that place, we're going to go through there because I have a plan I got to accomplish. If you ever think to yourself, there's no way that Jesus would do that for me. He had a plan to accomplish with Lazarus and was willing to put himself in danger to accomplish that plan. Now that times 10,000 times 10,000 because Jesus said, there's a plan the Father wants to accomplish and it's me going to the cross. If you ever think Jesus is too slow to show up, remember he went to the cross and nothing's going to stop him from accomplishing his purposes in your life. So he says, okay, this guy's dead. We're going to go. On arrival, verse 17, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. I love the King James here because when at one point he's going to say, open up the tomb, and they say in the King James, but Lord, it stinketh. Lazarus dead 4 days. Okay, there's no chemical preservatives. It's all natural things, spices and things they would put on a body. But outside of this, at this time, there were many Jews who believed for 3 days after a person died, the spirit of this person, the soul, would hover around the body in an attempt to come back into the body to bring this person back to life. But on the 4th day, the soul departs. So this is a way of emphasizing, no, he is like dead. Okay, he is. So Lazarus, totally dead. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in their loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. So Martha shows up to Jesus. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. And Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise in the resurrection at the last day. Right here, that makes the interaction makes total sense. She comes out. She's like, if you had been here, you could have saved him. Jesus says he's going to rise again. She's like, I know my theology. I've been taught well. At the last day, Jesus will bring everyone back to life. There will be a resurrection. So at this point, it makes total sense what she's saying, how she's interacting. But I want to note here what she says is, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. So one of the beautiful things about this passage is that trust Jesus, his timing is good, and yet he doesn't rebuke Martha when she says, I don't like your timing. Think about the freedom in that. You can be like, God, I trust that you are going to accomplish your purposes, that you love me, and that if you would go to death for me, you are going to do the best thing for me. But P.S., I don't like your timing. There's nothing in Scripture that says you can't freely say that to God. Listen to this from Psalm 13. Psalm 13 starts like this. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all the day? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? P.S. The next verse is not God saying, how dare you? So you and I have the freedom to say, I can trust God in this, and yet at the same time, I'm allowed to bring my complaints and my struggles to him. You don't have to pick one or the other. And if you go to this side and complain, God says, I hear you. And if you go to this side and you trust, he says, good. And if you mix it all together, he's able to look at your heart and go, I understand. It's complicated. You trust, but you struggle. And today you trust more, and tomorrow you'll struggle more. But I'll meet you in that space. There's no condemnation for her struggle in this situation. What she doesn't know is that Jesus is going to bring her a truth that's going to be like transformative for her. It's not just like hey, here's some more information. If she will grab a hold of this, and if you and I will grab a hold of this, it will turn our lives upside down. If you and I are going to trust in Jesus, he has to move beyond a theological concept to someone we know. Remember, this whole passage started that there was this relationship, this connection with Jesus, with Mary and Martha and Lazarus. So if right now, when you hear about Jesus, you're like, he's a theological concept to me, he wants to get you to the place where not just you know him, but you know him. Not just that you understand things about him, but that he rests upon your soul in a way that you say, I truly, truly can trust in him. And I'm going to give you the number one tool in order to do that. And you may hear me say that, and you're like, oh, he's going to say the Bible. That's good. Not number one tool. Oh, prayer. It's good. Not the number one tool. Tim's preaching on Sunday. No, not the number one tool. Because those tools are useless if you don't spend time with him. If you're going to know Jesus at a deep heart and soul level, such that you could come to him and say, I know if you were here, you could have kept Lazarus from dying. I know if you step into this space, things can change. You have to know him, and that requires time. Dallas Willard, the great Christian thinker, philosopher, years ago was asked, what's the most important thing that Christians should be doing? And what did he say? The ruthless elimination of hurry. Because as we slow down, we can abide and be with Jesus. So if you want to know Jesus like Mary and Martha and Lazarus did, it's because they spent time with him. And so you and I need to, in the same way, spend time with him in a deep and abiding way. Again, Martha ends this section by saying, I know he will rise again on the last day. And watch the response of Jesus, verse 25. I love this chapter. Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this, Martha? Let's break this down. I am the resurrection and the life. Not I'm going to be the one who causes it. I'm not pointing you to it. I'm not going to teach you about it. I am the resurrection and the life. If you want to know the source of resurrection power, he tells us what it is. It's him. It's not this external thing. Like resurrection and life and Jesus are woven together. So he says, I am the resurrection and life. Now watch this. He says, the one who believes in me will live even though they die. I'll ask you this question. Are you convinced that if you know Jesus, you will come back to life and live forever in heaven? Like, not like, are you like, yeah, I'm hoping. But do you like know it? Because someone like the Apostle Paul says this, it would be by far better for me to go with Jesus, but instead, I'll stay here because he's got work for me to do. I remember teaching on that passage from the Apostle Paul years ago, and one of the leaders I was working with came up after, and I was like, are you in that place? He's like, I'm not there, but I want to be there. Are you in the place where you are convinced that what Jesus says is true? The one who believes in me will live even though they die. Like, I'm really asking you to think about that, not just in this moment, but for today, in the days ahead. Like, are you convinced if you walked out of here and it all ended that you'd be like, I'm going to be with Jesus. I'm confident of that. Are you like, yeah, sort of? Are you like, I'm rolling the dice and I think it's a good plan? Because he doesn't say like, we'll see. He's like, that is a fact. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. Now, let me tell you about the God who weaves things together, okay? A couple weeks ago, I drove all the way to Augusta, Georgia for a very profound conference on philosophy. And no, I'm lying to you. It was a G.I. Joe toy festival that I went to, okay? Just going to be honest with you. I drove all the way to Georgia. It's like 18 hours or 16 hours, right? There's a million podcasts. There's a million videos you cannot watch, but you can put on and listen to the audio. There's Audible books, all these different things, right? And so I'm thinking, what do I want to listen to? And so just came to my mind. I'm like, oh, I saw this teaching of a discussion between Sean McDowell, who's an apologist and professor at Talbot School of Theology, and he's talking to another Talbot professor named Stephen Miller. And they're talking about the research that Stephen Miller did on NDEs, near-death experiences. People who die on the operating table and then come back to life. And so I was like, this is going to be really interesting. So I listened for an hour and a half or 2 hours to these two guys talk about this topic of near-death experiences. I went to this profound conference on philosophy. I came back. I sat down to continue prepping my sermon. And guess what I was prepping a sermon on? The resurrection and life after death. And I thought to myself, only God. Do you know how many audiobooks that I haven't completed are on my phone? Spoiler alert, a lot. But I didn't pick any of those. I picked that topic. I listened to it and I thought, God just wove this whole thing together. And watch where he lands this in verse 26. Okay, he says, I'm the resurrection and life. Whoever believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. And then he asked that question, do you believe this? I want you to think about what Jesus just said. He's speaking from two different angles. He's saying, if you die, you will live. I bet you 99% of us go like, yeah, that's the story I've heard. But the next section, he says, if there are people who are living and they're believing in me, they will never die. If right now you believe in Jesus, you are immortal. Pastor, that's crazy talk. You got to talk to Jesus. I'm just telling you what he said. That means that you will never truly die. The world might look and go, oh, that person's dead. But Jesus would look and go, just went from one place to the next. If you believe in Jesus, he says, you will never truly die. And he's convinced, as he says that Martha's going to go, what? That he asks, do you believe this? So let me ask you that question again. Not just, do you believe that if you die, one day you'll be resurrected? But Jesus says, whoever believes in me will never die. Is that something that like sits in your soul? Not they're going to put me in a box or put me in an urn or something else, but that one day when I stop breathing my last breath, I do not die. I just move to another place. Because that's what Jesus himself said. Listen to this quote from Billy Graham. I love this quote. He says, someday you will read or hear that Billy Graham is dead. Don't you believe a word of it. I shall be more alive than I am now. And I will have changed my address. I will have gone into the presence of God. The reason I want you to buy and read this book is because this passage, Jesus is saying, I'm going to tell you what's real. I'm going to tell you what reality is, because the world says you're going to die and it's just cold darkness. And then the next level of Christianity says you'll die and then someday you'll be resurrected. And Jesus would affirm that, but in a more full way, he says the story of reality is you will not die if you believe in me. Think about that. You will not die. The confidence you can walk around with being like, look, I'm immortal. Oh, because you're really strong? No, actually, because I know how weak I am. I will never die, according to Jesus. Do you believe that? Do you believe that? Oh, just, you got to sit in that space and let that own you, to just, that you could walk around and go, I can't die. I have Jesus, so I can't die. Listen to me. If you don't have Jesus yet, I want you to get to the place where you're like, I have Jesus and now I know I can't die. And Jesus, after he says that, you're like, okay, well, great story, but there's still a guy who's dead in the tomb 4 days. He stinketh. Let's go back to the text. Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who has come into the world. After she said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here, she said, and is asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house comforting her noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. So all these mourners come with her out. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would have not died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her were also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? She asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. You have Jesus saying, you will never die, and yet he sees the impact of this moment on the people he loves, and it says he was deeply moved. So let me just say two things. If you're in a place of struggle and pain right now, there's a Jesus who says, trust me, a Jesus who says, you can complain to me, and a Jesus who is deeply moved by your pain as well. Now, how do I know that? He knows he's going to bring Lazarus back to life, and yet he's deeply moved. He doesn't say, get over it, it's not a big deal. He says, I know what my plan is, and yet I see your pain and what death causes and what sin causes. I am in the space with you hurting. And then verse 35, the shortest verse in the whole Bible, Jesus wept. Further proof that he is deeply moved by what's going on. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could he not have opened the eyes of the blind man, have kept this man from dying? Jesus, once more, deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Mary, the sister of the dead man, by this time there was a, quote, bad odor, for he has been there 4 days. Lazarus stinketh. Then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said it for the benefit of the people standing here, that they might believe that you sent me. When he said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. Many scholars have noted if he hadn't said Lazarus, all the dead people would have been walking out. Walking dead back in the times of Jesus. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. If he hadn't let Lazarus die, they would have not have seen this moment. So again, where we started, God knows what he's about. He knows his timing. He's doing things that are beyond our understanding. Wrestle with him, even complain to him, talk to him, but trust him. If he can do this, he can take care of your issues and mine. Lazarus, come out. He comes out looking like a mummy. Jesus says, unwrap him. They unwrap him. Lazarus is now alive again. But according to Jesus, he never really died. He just shifted locations for a while. And now he's back. There's a great poem called Lazarus Laughed. It was written because Lazarus, as a friend of Jesus, who's now promoting resurrection, is going to have people who don't like him. And if you're a Sadducee who doesn't believe in the resurrection, you go to Lazarus and you say, hey, we know about what happened. Keep your mouth shut or we're going to kill you. And Lazarus goes, ha, ha, ha. That's the best moment ever that someone could say, come at me, bro. Like, what are you going to, you're going to kill me again? I've seen what's on the other side. I welcome that. But Lazarus was brought back because he had a purpose and Jesus had a purpose in that. But I want you to see that Jesus is the one who defines what life and death are. He tells you what's really real. Let me ask you this question again. Not just do you trust him, not just do you struggle and know that he's with you in the struggle, not just do you know that when you weep, he is deeply moved and weeps with you too, but do you believe that if you are in Christ, you will never die? Don't you want to walk in that space? Because that's what's really real. Let's pray.